Welcome to this edition of Deep Dish and Tell. I am super excited today because I get to be hanging out with Cameron Chesnut, one of the coolest guys in all of aesthetic medicine. In fact, I think I'm cooler today just because I get a chance to hang out with him. Cameron is a dermatologist, Mohs surgeon, and an aesthetic surgeon up in Spokane, Washington. He's got a huge practice. He's a big name, and he's an incredibly interesting person. Wait to hear the things that we're going to learn about him today. Cameron, I'm super excited you're here, buddy.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
man.
you. Appreciate it. That was the nicest intro ever. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
So you're welcome to Chicago. You're here in town for?
We're here for the ASDS annual meeting.
And you're on my program, Deep Dish and Tell.
I love it. So fun. Thanks for the invitation.
Are you okay if I make you cry?
I'm sort of expecting it, to be honest. So cheers to that.
Cheers,
Let's
man.
get ready for some
Appreciate it,
emotion. Here we go.
All right, so tell me what brings you to Chicago.
So this is the ASDS annual meeting, which is one of my favorite meetings to go to. It's the meeting for dermatologic surgeons to come together. There's a lot of aesthetics that's non-surgical and injectable. There's reconstructive. And then my little sort of like outskirts of that is the aesthetic surgery part of it. So blepharoplasty, facelift, a little bit more complex eyelid reconstruction. So this is my chance to come with my fellows and kind of be in our element a little bit.
So tell me a little bit more. You know, you're a dermatologist, Mohs surgeon. You do quite a bit of surgery.
I do.
How'd you get into that?
Well, it was something I was always kind of interested in. As I was looking in medical school, I thought about all of the, I would say, three-dimensional reconstructive types of specialties. So that included like orthopedics, ENT, plastics, ophtho, and derm. And as I was kind of looking at where I wanted that end road to be, I knew that derm was a way to get to some, more aesthetic things. And of course, you're in medical school, you don't really know what your life's going to look like. And I sort of found a road that looked sort of appealing in the way I would want to go. And I kind of put my head down and went for it.
Did you ever think about going into surgery?
I did, yeah. Derm was the only non-surgical specialty I was considering, really. And I had some contact in medical school with some derm surgeons who were doing really big, cool stuff. And I saw the aesthetic elements of their practice, and I saw the reconstructive elements, and I thought, like, well, that fits pretty well. I'm like I like to like jump between tasks quickly. And at younger ages, that meant like Mohs was a great option for that, right? Like
Mohs surgery. So for the people who don't know, is a surgery for cancer surgery, and it's the way we take out little slices of skin and then close it up afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Like multiple reconstructions, sort of like in one day, stacked after another, all little complex three-dimensional problems to solve. So it really resonated with me. I love the 3D spatial part of it, but I knew I liked cosmetics as well. And so right when I got into residency at UCLA, I got plugged in with our plastics and facial plastics and oculoplastics group there, which was just a really unique collaborative environment that my mentor, Gary Lask at UCLA had set up, where he had just incredible relationships built with this like inner flowing of fellows and residents between all those specialties. So it worked really well.
Did you always know that you were going to go towards surgery within dermatology?
100%. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
So I want to go back to this. So why not go into general surgery or plastic surgery or otolaryngology?
Yeah, when I was looking at the sort of surgical routes to get there, it was really the derm surgery part that I liked the best. I loved that sort of Mohs part of it. When I was looking at like what a bread and butter would be. I thought like, well, that's the way. That's what I want to do. I love that. And
do you like your day better when you're doing surgery or when you're seeing patients in the clinic?
Oh man, I love doing surgery. I think that's a pretty universal thing amongst all of us as surgeons. Like, the process for me of like my mental preparation, getting in my flow state, visualizing, getting into it, and then getting to go. Like I don't know if you get this, but every time I'm doing a procedure, I literally have this moment where I'm like, I'm so grateful. I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe somebody's like paying me to do this. Like I love this. Do you
ever think like you're taking a knife and you're cutting someone? You're like, I'm cutting this person open.
Yeah. Well, that's like the most common question you get as a surgeon from people. Like, how do you do that? Right? And especially early on, that's how our training flows, stepwise. Of like, that is very novel at first, and then at some point it becomes part of the the road to get to your sort of end result. And it's never lost on you, but it definitely gets kind of put into this like procedural paradigm of like, that's crazy, but some of the other stuff's crazy. Raising a deep plane flap or transposing a fat pad or something is like,
So deep plane flap of the face or a fat pad of the eyelid, blepharoplasty, right? So now you're talking about two different things. There's Mohs reconstructive surgery for after cancer, but then there's also like cosmetic surgery.
Correct.
How do you split your time between the two?
I do very little Mohs surgery and reconstruction now. Earlier in my career, I was like about 50-50. My time was very evenly divided between those. And I loved that because Mohs reconstruction has a lot of those like stimulating three-dimensional things that make your hands better, make you know how tissue moves better. But I knew that I loved cosmetics, and so I always like reserved half my time to really dive into that. And as I've evolved on, I just have gravitated more towards the cosmetic surgery part of things. And now I loved it. And
What'd you love about it?
I love the sort of very unique challenges that it poses. And honestly, I really love the ability to change and innovate within that space. There's so many little things that you can do to better yourself all the time.
But the patients are very different, aren't they?
Patients are very different, right? And that's like a whole nother subspecialty. So it's funny because you say, we sit down on that surgical day and kind of all that other stuff isn't really happening at the moment. I mean, It's a human being in front of you who you have a pretty significant relationship with, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of trust going in both directions, not just towards you, but a lot in the other way as well. But a lot of that happens beforehand when you're, in your patient selection. And it sounds cliche, but it's really true about like, you have to have this gravitational vibe with this patient that makes it so that there's enough trust and that there's no such thing as a perfect result ever.
Right.
You could be so good, so perfect, but there's always these little things that are going to bother you.
So there's no such thing as a perfect result?
No, absolutely not.
So when you're doing cosmetic surgery, how do you know when you're finished? Like you're doing the facelift, you're doing the eyelids. When do you say, okay, you know what, this looks right?
This is a very artistic question and a very it's rhetorical in some sense because you don't know. And just like any artist, you don't want to overwork anything because things get bad there. And something I often talk about with my fellows is like, I find in my hands that I get to a point where I'm like, this is really good. I love what's happening here. But there's this one little thing that I kind of want to like make a little bit better. And for me, sometimes chasing those little minor degrees, literally maybe 1% of improvement, exposes a lot more complications, and a lot more morbidity to the patient. So I think a lot of it is learning when it's done is a lot of like, what's low-hanging fruit? How I picked all the low-hanging fruit, and now am I looking at the thing at the top of the tree that's kind of forbidden I shouldn't really be going after.
So there's a judgment here, a judgment call of when you think you're going to get a good result.
I think sadly, yes, there's definitely some judgment involved in that. There's definitely the objective part of your planning, like your procedural plan.
Yeah.
But as we know, when you start rolling on that very set procedural plan that you visualize through, you're making a million decisions at every like branch point as to what to actually do along the way.
Yeah. I once wrote an article on ethics in medicine, and I talked about like in medical school, we don't learn, it's not our hands that are so special that makes us different.
Right.
And it's not even the knowledge or smart, being intelligent, because there's lots of people out there intelligent. There's lots of people out there who have great hands, a lot of specialties. What makes us unique in medicine is that we learn to make judgment calls.
Right.
You have to make judgment calls all day long.
Yeah.
Right? Do I go up or down on the blood pressure medicine? Do I raise the flap? Do I not raise the flap? Do I do surgery? Do I not do surgery? Like you make 1,000 judgment calls a day. And what makes a good doctor or great doctor is that ability to make good judgment calls. Do you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a muscle you build too, right? Because early on, decision fatigue, it exists everywhere, but it's easy, I think, for us to get that too, quite a bit. And you don't even realize, like, it's interesting with my younger surgeons and fellows, when they do like their first big cases, they're so tired afterwards. And it's not physically tired, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's making a million decisions that are really poignant, really pertinent, and really challenging. You've never really made this exact decision before, right?
All right. So one thing that it's interesting is like, so you're a dermatologist and you're a surgeon. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I would say earlier in my career that was more of a like an identity part of it. Like what are you? What are you going for? And my practice now is very much would fit it much more into a paradigm of facial plastic surgery. That's almost exclusively what I do. But when you're getting there, I think it's a little bit of like, well, what's your baseline training, right? What do you have from a knowledge base? Like what procedures do you know how to do? Where does your interest and passion lie? And then how do you bridge those things together a little bit? Because I could be interested in being the best fighter pilot in the world. I don't have that. Like I can't get there. And so thankfully, my fellowship training and my residency training gave me some of that like direction towards the things that I was really passionate about. Then of course that evolves and changes over time too. but I knew that I really like doing my first blepharoplasties as a resident. I was like, oh, I love the intricacy. I love this so much. It's so complex, so intricate, and I loved the process of kind of getting those that gratification at some point down the road. It's not immediate, but kind of seeing what that looked like. And again,
okay, but do you identify yourself as a surgeon, a dermatologist, somewhere in between, or neither?
Definitely as a surgeon.
So you're a surgeon.
I am so far from dermatology, especially in general dermatology. Yeah. That overlap for me comes in the reconstructive aspects in Mohs surgery. Yeah. That's where my foot is still in dermatology, but
Good. So is that something that you get pushback from in your community?
Yeah.
Professionally?
Oh my gosh.
And how do you deal with that?
Such a good question. I think like many things, it was like a little bit of having to prove yourself. Proof's in the pudding a little bit. And so when I first started going to the facial plastics meeting, the American,
because you're a member of the American Academy of Facial Plastics, which is my organization, so
yes,
I'm proud
I love
to have
that.
you part.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite meetings. It's the most pertinent to my practice. I teach there, and it took time to get there. And one thing I learned from Gary Lask is that those relationships that you create are really, really important. And so I have my people in AFPRS who have been sort of like, I guess, had my back since the very beginning.
The American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, which accepts dermatologists, accepts oculoplastic surgeons, accepts plastic surgeons. Yeah. It's a multi-specialty group.
It's one of the few that has this like core 4 presence, like ASDS has it. That's why, you're at our meeting, and we just gave a talk together with facial plastics, oculoplastics, and derm surgeons.
Yes.
And so early on in that, you definitely have to have people that like believe in you and have your back, and you have to have your confidence and your head down a little bit. And my practice has evolved a lot, but a lot of it I think is really results driven. Like, what do your results look like? Are they good? Are you someone to like, do I want to do what you're doing? So I was just at that meeting last week, and I always kind of chuckle to myself that
you're at the AFPRS, the facial plastics meeting last week.
I was at the facial plastics meeting last week, and I love that because it's a rapid fire format. Most of the talks are 10 or 20 minutes. They're back to back to back, right? And you are paying attention so deeply to this person's like very innovative idea, and then at the end you see the results, and you're like, I don't really like those. And so you're like, dang, I paid attention to all those things that I didn't really need it. Or the opposite happens where you're listening, you're like, this doesn't sound like a thing. And then you see the person's results at the end, and you're like, those are incredible. Like, I wish I would have, kind of grasped that a little bit more. So for me, one thing is I always put my before and afters at the beginning of my talks now. So when you see them, you're like, do you like these? If you do.
Okay, so you get great before and after results. I have to say that. I've been on your website, and I know others that say you have great before and afters. But take me back to the question where I wanted to ask you, like the pushback, your identification. You're coming out, you're a dermatologist, and you're going to community, and you're like, I want to do facelifts.
Yeah.
Like, who are like, what the fuck?
Right. Yeah, that's very true. So again, that's where you have to believe in yourself and what your training is a little bit. Dermatologists do facelifts.
Were you confident? You came out and did it?
Oh yeah. My training was very good. I saw a lot of lifts with a lot of different people, which is one of the benefits of being in a place like LA. And so
because LA is where you trained.
LA is where I trained. Yep.
And you're at UCLA, right?
I was at UCLA.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that training was with general plastics and facial plastics and derm surgeons, all of whom were doing very different types of lifts, right? So I was very confident where I was going, and I was very like appropriately cautious at the beginning, and then I just kind of pushed those little things to get more into deep plane facelifting, and so to really get to your questions, do you get pushback? Yeah, some. I think a little bit. I think a lot of people are more quiet about it, and it's more behind your back than to your face,
right?
Which is just human nature. It's a lot easier to do that. But then at some point, people are like, damn, this is really good. Like, you earn that respect a little bit.
I definitely want to talk to you more about
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Robert.
We got two of your favorite pizzas right here.
All right, so which, Robert, I hear this is the best pizza place in Chicago.
That's what they tell me.
And
I certainly like to think so.
And tell us what pizzas you have for us today.
So today we have a gluten-free pizza. It's our duck prosciutto.
Duck prosciutto?
Yeah.
Now that's not very common to put duck on a pizza, is it?
No, it's not. We get a cured duck breast from Smoking Goose down in just outside of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And what's nice about that pizza is that we put 8 slices on the pie and we bake it so that the fat gets rendered into the sauce. And then when it comes out of the oven, we put 8 fresh slices over the top. So you get the duck kind of cooked in 2 different ways. It has a house-made red sauce, a little bit of claritin and pepper, and the gluten-free crust we make fresh. We use flour from Caputo, Italian flour company, and it's a really nice gluten-free pizza. You'll definitely enjoy it.
Wow. Fantastic. Robert's Pizza.
Thank you so much.
Pretty good, huh? We don't do like this in Spokane, do
No,
they?
I don't. I resonate with Robert. Not just because we're curly-haired brethren, but because you can feel the passion in the pizza, right? Like just even explaining it, you do things different. You think about it. You take the little steps that nobody would ever know. There's 2 layers of that. Like I love that. And you come to Chicago as a New York guy, and just like what we were just talking about, like you do your thing. Like you know you're confident in what you're going to do, and you're going to succeed. I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Robert's Pizza.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Love it.
One of the best places in Chicago, Robert's Pizza. One thing I want to finish up before we go on to some other things more personal, but your practice is now pretty heavily surgical and non-surgical as well.
Right.
Do you do like fillers and injectables or no?
No, my practice is almost exclusively surgical at this point.
Really? Yeah.
And I moved home to where I grew up.
Yeah.
My wife Aubrey.
And home is Spokane, Washington.
Home is Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yeah, nice little gem hidden up there, which is just on the border of Washington. So Spokane and Coeur d'Alene are right across the border. My wife Aubrey and I both grew up there.
Wait, so you knew your wife growing up?
High school sweethearts.
Oh, dude, this is like a great story.
Yeah. We've high school sweethearts. We traveled around, did our things that we have to do together, and we had our first baby in Los Angeles at the very end of fellowship.
You're a fellow, yeah.
And it was that time frame of like, well, what are you going to do with your life, right? Where are you going to go? And world's your oyster a little bit. And we definitely thought about staying in LA or Southern California because it's so alluring. There's so many patients there. I knew what I wanted to build in my head. I had the vision. And Spokane, Coeur d'Alene doesn't really fit that vision very well. Right. And so I really had to do some kind of digging into, how could we do this if we went home? That's where our family is. And so we made the decision that we were just going to go. We weren't going to, my first thing out of fellowship was to go start building. Basically, I didn't
start building what?
Start building the practice that I had envisioned having, which is, what I'm getting towards now. Right. And we kind of went with this, if you build it, they will come type of setup. And we're getting there at this point. In my practice, 99% of my patients travel to Spokane
to come see you. And you're doing, you have a fellowship program. So if someone wants to get into surgical, if they want to become a derm surgeon, they want to do surgery, how do they do it? What's the best way to do it?
Oh man, it's a really challenging course to get there. My fellowship that I have 2 fellows per year. It's through the ASDS, the meeting that we're at here. And we're the unicorn. I'm the unicorn of the specialty in some capacity, and this training program is certainly the unicorn of those. Sorry, I don't mean to call myself a unicorn.
No, but I like it.
It's very different in that sense, and so the other fellowships that exist are very different. They're injectable based, right?
Yes.
The majority of cosmetic derm is injectables, devices, and
so Botox, botulinum toxins, fillers is the majority. Yeah.
Yep, lasers, radio frequency tightening, all these different devices. My practice is surgical, and so my fellows come knowing that that's what they're going to do for a year. Yeah. Most of them have already done a Mohs fellowship with reconstructive, so they've already done that year of surgery. Some haven't. Some have been in practice for a bit, but they know that this is the outlet to kind of get the exposure to the bigger cosmetic procedures in dermatologic surgery. And my goal with them, as there's 10 of them out now, is I want them to go grow their practices and be busy and start their fellowships. Today at the meeting, as we're talking in the blepharoplasty section that I did, when I first started talking about that 10 years ago at this meeting, or 9 years, whatever it was, there was 6 people in the room. It was we're
so that. More and more people are starting to go towards that. But you mentioned you're a unicorn, and I love this concept because I'm starting to go with this here.
Oh no!
So
what did I get
your practice into? Also has. You have a really holistic practice, and for those who don't know, they can go to your website and see. But you're doing all kinds of treatments, from LED to I think hyperbaric oxygen, and so talk to me a little bit about why you add all those things to your practice.
Yeah, so that stemmed from a very personal passion and interest of mine as well. Kind of like I was talking about, you have this ability to get you close to your passions or what direction you want to go. And personally, I'm very into wellness or biohacking, all these sort of cliche words.
What's biohacking?
Biohacking would be using things outside of your body to improve your physiology or your biology. Hyperbaric oxygen, prime thing. You get in there, you pressurize, you get oxygen, you lengthen the telomeres, the caps on your DNA, so you can like slow down your aging process. So that would be like a biohack a little bit. And I love those things personally. I'm very into them, and I use them for my surgical patients in their recovery. So hyperbaric oxygen is undoubtedly a game changer in the surgical recovery course for my patients. And so
they heal faster.
They heal faster.
They get better results, you think?
I do, and evidence backs that up in things like fat transfer. Fat transfer has better outcomes when patients are exposed to hyperbarics afterwards. You know, having had hundreds of people, you know, kind of go through it in my practice, I see faster recoveries, less swelling, because people have to travel home, and so they go home in better shape when they're getting to that point. So I have this love personally. I find a benefit for it for my patients, and so I build this space in my practice, this physical, actual space that has all of these things. IV nutrition after their procedures, pulsed electromagnetic frequencies, things to help them in their recovery phase when they're with me in Spokane for the week, which just naturally opens up the door into this is functional medicine in a sense, right? And I love that too. And so thankfully I found some, you know, other providers who love that as well, and they know more about it than I do.
Right.
And so I can fill this like pre-existing beautiful space that has all these tools with them who can use it for patients that I never even see, right? Just like serving our local community with this.
So you'll offer functional medicine to people who aren't even surgical patients.
Correct.
Just as itself.
Yeah, that space of our practice, we just expanded it actually, is you know, maybe 50% post-surgical patients and 50% just.
Is that a growing part of your practice?
It is, yeah. And you know, from a revenue standpoint, if you look at it from the nuts and bolts business-wise, it's not like some crazy lucrative part of our practice. It's a passion project, right? You could put something else in that square footage and do better financially, but for me, it gives me something I love. It gives me an outlet to make my patients' outcomes better, and it serves my community with that a little bit.
So I'm hearing a theme here that like you do what you love.
Yeah.
And like,
don't you? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will do something because they think they're gonna make more money. I'll do more facelifts and make more money. I'll open up in Manhattan, I'll make more money.
Yeah, that's
you
a good
go
point.
home, you open up the dream practice you want, you add functional medicine, you're adding things that you love doing.
Right.
So back to this unicorn concept. Rumor has it that you will be on an ad board during COVID time and be like in the sauna or be with like in the middle of a workout. Is that true, or is that just hearsay?
Yes, so that's definitely true, but it's not exactly as it sounds. I would, during COVID, when we were doing some meetings and things like that, you know, these virtual meetings or ad boards or whatever, I would be in the sauna because, as you know, when you're committing to that, you're like, this is going to be 3 hours of my life, right? I'm going to be sitting. So that's number one. The sauna, I spend a lot of time in. That'd be another biohack, right? Improving your longevity, your cardiovascular health via heat or cold or whatever it is, right? Those are biohacks. So I would take that time to be in the sauna during those things. Also, here's the like super dirty truth secret is I have 3 kids running around my house.
Right.
And that is a sanctuary for me. And it literally is a sanctuary. It's where I journal. It's where I meditate. It's where I pray. It's where I get time away to myself. Like that is my reset time, right?
Yeah.
And so it's got great acoustics. It's quiet. It's private. It's the best place for me to do those meetings and those ad boards. So I definitely did do that.
So no shirt on in there?
No, I think I wore a shirt for most of them, yeah.
Oh, most of them.
I think, I'm trying to remember if I didn't. If I didn't, it was because I generally have a shirt on, yes.
Okay, so, but is there like, your days, how much of it is consumed with physical activities? Because I've seen pictures of you without a shirt, surfing, or doing something fun out there.
Yep.
How much is that as part of your day?
Well, so I kind of, as a family man with kids too, I divide my day into my time in the morning. Like from when I wake up to when I start working, that time is for me. That's when I go do jujitsu with my like crew. That's when I work out. That's when I read. That's when I do academic time, when I produce, when I'm creative. It's all
is when in the morning.
In the morning.
Okay.
The second I go to work, I belong to my patients and my staff, and like that is my time to like kind of produce and get output and kind of do all these things that I prepare for at the beginning, right? If it's a surgery day, my morning revolves around getting ready for that surgery. I'm in the hyperbaric chamber focusing. I'm literally entering a flow state via like a routine that I have.
When you're in the office?
When it's a surgery day.
So you're in a flow. You're like
I'm like starting my flow the second I wake up. I'm watching what I eat the days leading into it. I'm not drinking alcohol. I am like monitoring my sleep and my activity, and like I am like, my Aura ring helps tell me what my like heart rate variability is in my body
on a surgical day, because you're so committed to that.
Exactly. And it makes it better for me. It makes it more enjoyable, and I would argue with anybody that it makes my outcomes better. You know, when you have like a good day and kind of an off
you wake
day,
up in
like,
the morning, you're in peak shape.
I make every day a good day when I try to do that.
So should every doctor or surgeon have that physical routine? You think they're a better doctor if they do?
I mean, you were a collegiate athlete. We were just talking about this. I believe that the pressure and the results the pressure we have and the results we're expected to deliver, a lot of which comes from like physicality, decision making. You're better if you train and prepare like an athlete for those things. Like, you see somebody out like drinking the night before they have a big case. There's no way they're at their absolute peak the next day. That's just not happening.
So can you take me the rest of the day? So you operate, and then how's your day end?
So I operate. That's like my time that I, sort of am like giving away to patients and staff. And then I go home. And when I go home, I am my family's at that point. Basically, that's like different times of the day. It kind of depends on what's going on. But when I get home, I belong to my kids. I try to like leave my phone and distractions away. I'm coaching sports like we were talking about. Like I'm coaching basketball, football, soccer, whatever it is. I am playing with them. Sometimes I get a little physical activity then because they want to play or work out and they're my weights. But that is like belongs to my kids and Aubrey, my wife. That's our like family time. She's doing the same things. We're out playing basketball or doing whatever it is we're doing.
Your wife, who's your high school sweetheart?
Who's my high school sweetheart, who is the actual athlete in the family. She's like a all Pac-10 basketball player. She's she's the superstar, honestly, when it comes to it. But yeah, we love those things as a family, and that is our time. And then, we have our bedtime routine. The kids go to bed, and then it's like mine and Aubrey's time. And there's been periods of our marriage where that time would get like consumed with building a practice or like preparing for the next day's surgery. And as I've gotten older and more mature, I've learned like, honestly, that's a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Thankfully she's like graceful and wonderful and like understands, but I don't do that anymore, honestly. Like
does she help in the practice?
Yeah, so she's a PA.
Okay.
And she does the non-surgical injectable part of our practice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you guys do you think working with your wife is a good idea?
Good question. I think that we have a good dynamic because I don't see her that often. Like I see her at work, like we'll see pass in the hallways and stuff, and we definitely exchange ideas. So we can speak the same, not only do we work together, but we kind of do very similar things, so we can exchange ideas. And that's really kind of fun. But I think you have to be really careful about where your conversations go in private time. And,
so that you don't talk too much about work.
Right. Yeah. And because there's benefits to that you can have that close contact. But I think if you're not cognizant of your relationship and what your ultimate goal is together, it's not to run a business together.
Right.
It's to be like rock solid, partners for each other and support each other. Sometimes that involves business. Sometimes it involves parenting.
Right.
Sometimes it involves getting ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament, whatever. Like I think you have to be really careful about that.
Are you a good family man?
I think I could be better, but I work so hard at that.
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah. I try to be the best like dad I can be. I try to like speak to them about things that I think are important that I didn't learn until I was in my 30s. Like I think that you can look at somebody's priorities. This is like very classic. Look at somebody's calendar or where they're spending their time, and you can see their priorities. And I think if you look at that for me, they are.
So what are your priorities?
They are definitely at the top of that list.
The kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My wife and my kids.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm second. Like not whatever. Maybe there's some days I have more time for me, but I definitely like have a lot of personal and self-development time too.
Like what? Like
just
like
like
meditation.
Like workouts or choosing discomfort in a lot of different ways.
Choosing discomfort. What does that mean? Does that mean getting cold showers or?
Yeah, comfort is a slow death. And
comfort is a slow death.
Comfort is a slow death. I prefer discomfort. I prefer pain sometimes.
You prefer pain?
Sometimes. That's how you grow. You grow in those periods.
Physical or emotional?
All of them.
You prefer pain, physical and emotional?
No, I don't prefer that necessarily as much.
But you need it.
You need it to grow. You can't grow without it. Yeah. You can't grow without physical pain. You can't grow emotionally without emotional pain. You can't grow surgically without being in uncomfortable positions. That's how you get better at things.
So are you okay putting yourself in uncomfortable positions?
All the time. It's very calculated. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, talk to me physically. How do you do that? Jump into a cold
Oh my
pool?
gosh.
Or
So I'm just like,
or,
so many ways. So, okay. Ways to get uncomfortable physically, cold exposure. And I often am mixing that with workouts. So yeah, that you want to jump in a frigid cold river or get in an ice bath or get in a cryo chamber, that's really hard to do. So there's the physiologic benefits plus a gigantic cognitive benefit of like, I did something difficult today, or doing a hard workout. And before work, I do a lot of my workouts in the sauna at 140 degrees, and I'm doing a high intensity workout with a kettlebell or something, and you feel like you're gonna die a little bit, right? You're pushing it, it's very uncomfortable. Or jujitsu, that's like the ultimate of discomfort because you're literally having to give up. It's called papping. Like you're gonna choke me to unconsciousness. I have to quit.
Yeah.
Right? So you're pushing yourself to the point of quitting all the time. You get in terrible situations you don't want to be in. You're physically exhausted. You're in fight or flight. You're using all of your primal things to try to get out of this. And sometimes you just have to quit. That is really uncomfortable.
So after you do these things that push you into a zone of discomfort,
right,
do you come out of it stronger?
So then the flip side is you have to recover from those. You cannot be in a constant state of discomfort and breaking down. You have, from a physiologic state in a workout, you break your muscle down, and then the most important part is letting that muscle heal and recover to be stronger, and you overcompensate, right? That's what it's called. When you do bicep curls and you break that muscle down, you let it heal, and it's stronger and it's bigger and it's more capable afterwards. And I think we're the same. So that becomes the next trick is you do all these uncomfortable things. You need quiet time. You need time to recover. You need to be able to absorb those things and grow from them. The growth comes with the downtime. Right?
Okay, but there's got to be a limit to it. I'll give you an example.
Oh, for sure.
A few years ago, I really wanted to, I jumped out of an airplane. I did bungee jumping because I'm with you. Like I love a little bit of like the being on the edge. I think you appreciate the current time, the present, when you maximize your pleasure, maximize your risk.
Oh my gosh.
And there's no way to be more in the present than maximizing your pleasure or risk. So I was way into this, and I was doing it, and maybe not to the extreme that you do it, but then I was on a cliff, and I'm like, I'm gonna do cliff diving. And I'm looking off the cliff with all these cliff divers, and they're jumping. I'm looking down, I'm like, I was really scared. And I was sitting, I'm like, do I do it, do I not do it? And I was in my probably mid-40s at the time, and I didn't do it. And I was like, man, I should have done it, but I didn't do it. Where's that limit for you? Where you're like, you know what? It's just too much of a risk. I can't go there.
Right. There's growth in that experience for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you are, when I associate with like a deep understanding of philosophy and like, yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, being in the present, it's like one of the hardest things, right?
Right.
But you have to like understand the past and prepare for the future while being in that. So it's like this complicated realm to be in, right? And so you're standing, and I get that all the time. I love to ski and surf, and I get in uncomfortable spots where I'm like, I am not paddling for this wave. Like this is out of my realm at the moment, but that realm is dynamic sometimes, right? Like, so you have to be respectful of where you are in the moment cognitively too, to like, I don't want to jump off this cliff right now. I don't want to paddle into this wave. Like I know the punishment that comes on the other end if I fail, and I'm not willing to do that right now.
So your ability to look over the edge or to take that wave, does that make you a better surgeon? I mean, you push the limit. You're doing facelift, you're doing eyelids, which is, you're pushing the limits professionally in some ways, and you're getting better and stronger.
Right.
Do you think that comes from that whole, like the way you live your lifestyle?
Some element of it has to, right? Because it helps to know those limits and those decision-making things. I would say every single procedure I do, my fellows and I talk about this in our timeout before the case is like, what's our 1% better we're going to change today? Yeah. So we have that conversation, but it's small things. It's not looking over a cliff, proverbially, right? It's like these little baby micro adjustments. So it takes some of maybe the risk out of it, but it's a little uncomfortable,
right?
To like make these little minor adjustments. But once you like look back over the year at all these minor adjustments you've made, it adds up to be something, right? So I think in that realm of like what we're talking about with taking those risks, there's an element of just like a dopamine response in there, right?
Yeah.
Like you get the little rush, but then you get used to it and you need more and more and more, right? And so I think if you let's call it microdose your dopamine in the operating room, it can be really helpful, but you can't overdo it.
I agree. So that's a tricky balance to know, like push it, but not too much,
right?
Which I think is the judgment call. How'd you get here? Was this growing up, or your mom and dad, did they push you like this, or was it self-initiated?
No, I mean, I think I ask myself this a lot because I'm an only child, no brothers and sisters. Yeah. My parents divorced when I was in like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And so all of those things make your experience unique at least a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely have this like neurodivergent. I learned this word from a patient recently. She's like, "You're neurodivergent," and I was like, "I don't know what that means."
Yeah.
But like your brain works differently. I think we all are in some capacity, and so you put all those things together, and it makes you who you are, right?
Okay.
And there's parts of me that I like really like and want to pass on to my kids. There's parts of me that I don't like, of course, that I like want to get better at, but I'm like maybe don't want to pass it on. So it's this delicate balance of talking with my mom, who's still alive, about like, how did I get the way I am, trying to get some insight. But honestly, my parents weren't really this way at all. They didn't talk to me about these things. They didn't, they were great parents, but they were busy, and they both worked, and I was home by myself a lot. And so I'm still, as a parent, trying to figure out like how to do some of these things and how to get into it. And
okay, but you opened the door, so I'm going to follow up with this.
Yeah, please.
Parts of you don't like.
Oh yeah.
So what parts of you don't you not like?
Well, so in our practice, with our 40-some people that we have, we do these like strengths analyses, right?
Yes.
Where you like look at the different parts of you that you're strong at, that you're weak at. And in that, for me, my number one strength is competitiveness, which when you read about competitiveness as your number one strength, parts of it sound really good, especially when you're an athlete, especially when you're in medical school trying to get into the hardest specialties, especially when you're trying to get fellowships and grow. And like, that's how my surgeries get better, because, I want to be the best, right? And so you look at that phase of your life and it's like, oh, that's incredible. Like that person can push and win and get stuff done and put their head down. But then at the point I'm currently at in my life, as like a family is a priority, my own like wellness and longevity, my patient's outcomes, like you look at the competitive part and it kind of sounds shitty. Like that guy's kind of a dick, I'm not kidding. Like you look at it and you read it now, you're like, what good does this do you?
Right.
So you're learning how to like temper this competitiveness in an environment where I don't have anybody to compete against anymore unless I'm athletically competing. So I love those outlets. But when it comes to work, it's looking at these like those little 1%. That's my competitiveness for the day. Like, can I make this outcome better than it was last time?
So it's competitiveness against yourself.
Well, it turns into that, but I don't think it was ever that before. I think I was really driven by like winning.
Yeah.
And that guy's a dick.
So what about in your community? Are you competitive with the other doctors in your community, or are you collegial?
I mean, the other in my town with me is another AFPRS member, and he has fellow, and I have fellows, and we share them, and so. I mean, there's avenues that overlap, but he does a lot of rhinoplasty. I don't do that at all. And so there's like, we want to feed each other and keep each other like happy and busy. But I think there's a little bit of that at first, but thankfully, where I'm at now, there's no real local competition because I don't really have any local patients. People find me via social media, usually. They resonate with my message and my outcomes, and they get to know you a little bit. And so I don't really have that local competitiveness. It's like, more so it's like you and I competing and our colleagues in LA and New York. At this point, the way that it goes is it's like, the patients that are kind of like looking at all the, kind of skilled surgeons around the country more so.
All right, so are you a good dad?
Short answer, yes. I want to be a better dad, and that's one of the things I like work hardest on.
How do you be a better dad?
Time is the ultimate teacher, I think, a little bit.
Well, is it really? Because there's people who sit on the couch, drink beers, and don't talk to their kids.
I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'm like in my morning time when it's like my time, when I'm like reading, I'm often like mixing in books like dedicated towards like being a better parent. Like I read books or listen to books about that topic. And as my kids get older, my oldest is 9. I have a 9-year-old boy, an 8 and a 6-year-old girl. As they get older, those like topics that I'm like listening to get more specific to them and their personalities as I get to know them better. Mm-hmm. So I'm coaching my son's football team, and I'm like listening to books on like how to integrate those things together, how to like motivate them, how to like kind of be a better dad. Yeah. I don't even know how else to say it. So, and then I think there's like the reflection part of things, like when things don't go well, part of being competitive, that part of me that I don't like, is it's hard to own things when you lose. Yeah. Or at least it is for me, excuse me. It's a little hard for me to own things when I lose.
Do you?
Sometimes.
I'd say, I fucked up.
Yeah, I do now.
Yeah.
I can't say that I always did that very well, which makes you like, a tough dad.
Yeah.
So now I have a much lower threshold to like, you know, I believe that as a parent, this is one thing I've really learned. And if I were to talk to like, you know, one of my fellows right now has a new baby, and it's like, you know, your ability to stay calm is your superpower.
Yes.
As a dad, it's your superpower, but it escapes you sometimes, right? And so like figuring that out, I don't even know how I figured that out, but at some point I'm like, okay, probably in reading or listening, like, okay, this is my superpower. I got to get better at that superpower, you know? And so when those things escape you, you got to also be able to own it. And like,
so your superpower is staying calm in a difficult situation.
I think so.
What makes you lose it?
I wish I knew that answer.
Yeah.
It's nothing consistent. To be fully honest, it has nothing to do with what my kids are doing.
Right.
It has everything to do with what's happening outside of my kids and my other life.
Right.
And work and business. And we talked a little bit about the stress of owning a business.
Yeah.
And your marriage, all those other things like come together, and that's what it has nothing to do with them.
So
Which makes you so inconsistent, right?
But
like,
the stuff you do in the morning, like you said, you meditate, you're religious, sit in the sauna, you do the cold plunges. Does all that give you more like reserve?
oh, heck yes. 1,000,000% yes.
Is that why you do it? Or part of the
I
reason?
think so, yeah. I think, but the tools that gives you, the growth that gives you applies to all aspects of your life. I'm a better husband today than I was ever, than yesterday and the day, like, because of those types of things and just like being aware and wanting to get better.
Right.
And you know, you can naturally be good at those things too, but for me, it takes effort.
So you're always doing self-improvement.
Yeah.
Sounds like, right?
Yeah.
What's the next self-improvement on your agenda? Is it another athletic skill you want to pick up? Is it some sort of education you want to teach yourself? Or is it another skill set?
I kind of let the recreation things come as they just evolve naturally. Like jiu-jitsu came into my life from one of my fellows. It was his idea, and I started doing it with my fellows in my business. And and so I just had a natural love for it. I'm not a grappler, I'm not a fighter, and so that was a really big growth period for me, which was addicting, right? Now all of a sudden you carry yourself differently, you think differently, you're physically different. So I don't even know what that would be from a like that. And I think for me it's really kind of like helping my fellows and my mentorship grow, because
So mentoring is something where maybe
I think as I've been reflecting over the past whatever, I'm starting to get this little like ego shift into, and I learned this from Gary Lask, to be honest. Like when I really reflect back on Gary had somehow had this ego shift. I don't even know what else to call it. I don't have a good word for it yet, but where he got so much like joy and value out of watching his mentees grow. And I think everybody gets that a little bit, but at some point it became more.
Everyone doesn't get that, you know. And I'm at the stage now too where I enjoy watching my fellows do great.
Yeah.
I love when I can put someone else on the podium or I can give them an opportunity. And everyone's like that. It's uniqueness, yeah.
Yeah, and I honestly probably haven't been as much that way. I love them deeply as people, and I want them to do well. But now that they're growing up, you know, it's fun to watch, and you get this like great. Like I lectured with two of my fellows today, and it's this great self-joy that, you know, it's like
You can make someone better.
Yeah, and they make themselves better. I give them an opportunity, right?
How are you with criticism? If someone says, you know, Cameron, that result sucks, or what the hell are you doing? You shouldn't be doing this, or you know, like, I mean, we all get it, and anyone who's pushing the envelope like you, it's part of the journey. Yeah. How do you manage that?
I think it probably depends on what the criticism is. I would say overall, that's been a struggle in my life to deal with criticism. As I've gotten older, more mature, it kind of depends what the criticism is. If I kind of agree with them, I don't take it as well. You know, I'm like,
so if you agree with them,
like if they're right, you know, like that's I don't do as well. I don't know, like
give me something where you're like, you know what, damn, he or she was right.
It's usually my wife. She's right, you know, and it's like gentle criticism, but it's like you fucked up a little bit, and you're like, I did, and so I'm better with that now, and she's really good at it, and she's learned me and things like that. But the the derm criticism, for example, like of like you shouldn't be doing this, and I'm like, you're wrong. That doesn't bother me. Like you're just flat wrong. That's a very narrow-minded, very like myopic, not forward-thinking type of mindset, and I don't really respect that mindset as much. I don't have it, and so it doesn't bother me as much.
Are you willing to change your mind on something, or to be like, you know what, maybe I could have been better on this?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I want to say yes, and that would be another thing that I work for, to be more open-minded.
Yeah.
But I think with my personality type, and it's a challenge to do that a little bit. And I see it in colleagues. I'm sure you do too, where they're just like, "You're wrong. Oh, this is wrong. If you do it this way, it's wrong." And you can't. And I've really gotten away from that, especially surgically. Things that I am very deep into, I'm probably better. This is like that ego thing, like. As the more you know, the less you know. The more.
Do you have a big ego?
I have an ego.
Do you have a big ego?
I don't know how to like compare that.
Do you think you need one to be a good surgeon?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I think you have to.
Nobody wants a surgeon who's like, oh, geez, I'm a little afraid to do this.
Right. No.
But there's also that ability to know when to stop too, right? It's a really hard thing to navigate.
And it's that balance of like, you know, you have to, on some degree, think that you're the best at what you're doing at that moment. Like, why is this person having surgery with me when she could be having it with you and you're better at it than me, right? So there is some aspect of like, and there's things that I truly believe that I do the best at, and there's things that I want to get better at, but you have to have that drive to improve and the ability to learn from your colleagues. That's why I love the AAFPRS meeting too, because you're around a bunch of other people that have their deep dives into these subjects that maybe you haven't been as deep into yet, and you're like, you get to learn from this, like, you know, like I said, you dive deep, you get all this knowledge, and you realize I don't know anything, right? So you get to get that exposure from other people.
Do you think that having too big of an ego can hurt you in business and in medicine?
Oh yeah, gives you blind spots. Gives you big blind spots. If your ego's so big that you're invincible or untouchable or the best and can't get any better, I think it's a big thing.
So what's the best way to control your ego?
Well, let's see. I think that from a surgical standpoint, I think one of the ways that's easy to do early on is really dig deep into your own results and look at them critically. And you will find things that you want.
You said that today in your lecture.
Yeah,
you know?
and I truly believe that, especially early on. Even now, I look at every result I look at, I'm like, here's the thing I would have wanted to make better. And so you build some humility in yourself, because you're, again, in the competitive nature, you're only comparing yourself to yourself. This is your result. And I think in business, as you were saying, like my favorite part of business is the like relationships with my staff. They're family. You know, I'm like, I was young when I started doing this, and they were too. And we've kind of grown up together in a lot of ways. And so, you know, it's people, it's lives, it's all the things. And so, just being exposed to that emotionally and sharing joys and sorrows like that keeps you humble in a quick minute, right there.
Yeah. And do you think your kids will follow you in your footsteps?
I don't know yet. I think that they are like interested, but I would say an interesting fact is like, I don't know that they really know what I do. You know, they know that I, from a very young age, fix owies, whatever that means to them, and now they know a little bit more, but they know that, you know, oh, people are in town from New York.
Well, not just medicine. Like, will your kids follow in your footsteps with this ability to like push the envelope with your, you know, take on discomfort? Like, do you do that? Like, when you teach your kid how to ride a bike, do you let them fall down?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, not in a mean way, but they won't grow without it. They won't. If they don't fall, they'll never experience the like macro to micro adjustments it takes to be successful.
So you're not. So are you a helicopter parent or not a helicopter parent?
I am a. Probably helicoptery in some ways, but I'm usually helicoptery in making sure that they're being tough, or that they're like choosing this, you know, like, I don't know. I'm the son of a nutritionist, for example, and so I grew up with a very keen awareness of like what was good and what wasn't in the sense of like nutrition. So I wasn't eating ding dongs and ho-hos and candy. My house, we're talking about insulin responses and things like that, right? And I want them to know those things, and I want them to be able to make their own choices. Nothing is forbidden. So from a helicopter standpoint, I'm not like, you can't do this. It's more like, here's why you probably shouldn't make that choice. And when they're 6, they're gonna eat the cake, right? So you have to like, you know, control that a little bit, but it's the consistency with that I start to see. Again, my oldest is 9, but he knows the mindset. He knows that pressures of privilege and growth comes in discomfort, and you know,
Did you grow up privileged?
I grew up in a very like middle class family.
Yeah. And your kids will have opportunities for more than you had.
Yes.
How do you manage that?
Oh my gosh, this is
a hard question because we all deal with that because I grew up really modest poor. Yeah.
It's the great conversation between my wife and I and our friends.
Yeah.
Because my kids think it's normal to have a ski in, ski out house,
right,
and live on the water and go out and to make them realize that that's not normal, or what it takes to achieve those things, which involves luck a little bit too, amongst other things. Like, that's how their friends are, and so it's a big discussion with us of like, how do you instill like a drive when you're sort of already at a great destination, you know? I don't know the answer to that yet, so maybe that should fall into my things I need to give. I don't know the answer, and I haven't met anybody who has that down, you know.
Tell me about social media. You're very active on social media. You got a great site, and I encourage everyone to go visit it. Your children, how are you going to introduce social media to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Social media for me grew very organically from just a passion. Like, I put things on there that I loved. It's very much a before and after driven thing, and then now there's more on like encouraging my fellow surgeons. Here's what I do from a surgical routine. Here's what I think about this. Like, it's weird that people care about my opinion now, you know, on these things, and but it's still very much based in like before and after results, right? So it's a tool for my patients, really, and my colleagues to like, here's who I am, here's what I believe. Do you like and resonate with this? If so, check me out. You know, do you believe in this sort of, you know, like recovery protocol?
You do your own social media.
I do my own social media. I have a social media director who helps me. She's like crack at like editing videos, and like she's so good at that type of thing, but the content still comes out of my brain, right? I write the captions, I come up with the ideas, I do all the things. She's more like taking that to the streets, like makes it visual. So yeah, it's me. I'm answering questions, I'm responding to DMs and things like that still. So when it comes to my kids, they're on my social media now because they're part of my life, and like a big part of my life, and so I introduce them because a lot of my patients and your patients are their parents too.
Will you allow your kids to be on TikTok? Will you allow your kids to be on Instagram? Will you restrict their hours on social media?
That's a good question. Right now, they have like little interest in screens because it's just not part of our family's lives. Yeah, for sure. Because you get on there and it's that dopamine response, right? It needs more and more and more. And so they do get some screen time. What happened, honestly, is at their school, when they were taking their like standardized testing thing, they didn't know how to use the iPad the first time they did it in kindergarten. They were very unfamiliar.
Right.
And so I learned like, well, that's a problem too. There has to be a balance of this. Like, you have to have some screen time so you know how to, like my son, as we're working on his handwriting, part of me is like, why are we working on your handwriting? You're never going to handwrite anything, you know? So there's that element of technology that I'm still trying to find the balance. And when it comes to social media, like, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
It is, isn't it?
And I don't know the right answer to it. And I want to say that I'll try to keep them off as much as I can via education plus some, just like restrictive parts. But, it's you don't want to deprive them either of something that is culturally or like in their peer group very different than anything I ever grew up with. There was no social media. That wasn't a thing. So if you're literally the only kid without it, is that good?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I mean,
yeah.
If you weren't a doctor, what would you be?
If I wasn't a doctor, I would be some type of an artist, probably. I don't mean that in a cliche way, as far as like I'm some phenomenal artist. That's not it. But I really like 3D spatial things when I see certain types of art, or even honestly photography is probably my favorite medium. I think if I could really pick it, I would be a surf photographer. I would be out in the water on these tropical locations and destinations, like visualizing how I can get the best shot and like working with this dynamic moving structure and trying to capture a moment.
So your medium would be photography, you think?
I think so. Yeah, Chris Burkhardt is a photographer who's like my absolute favorite. Yeah. He's a very famous, and his work as far as photography would be like, I could do
So
that.
if you had all the time and if you had all the money in the world, you would be?
I'd do what I'm doing now.
You do what you're doing now?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm so deep into it. I love it. It's like, it would change a little bit.
You do it for no money?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe, but it would be very select. and what I was doing then, and it would all be about probably training.
Yeah.
And trying to like achieve these, like I'd probably have to do some different goal setting as to what I was trying to accomplish, but I think I'd probably do the same thing.
What are your passions?
My personal passions are like fitness, wellness, and personal growth, I guess.
Yeah.
My kids are probably really one of my main passions now. That outlet starts to go to them, and trying not to live vicariously through them, but like they grow and change so fast that it's hard not to get so wrapped up in that, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And then, as far as my marriage, like you see fruits of labor there too.
Yeah.
And just like growing and getting more mature. I was like, when I look back at so many time points, even when I was married, I mean, we're high school sweethearts. We've grown up together, right? You're like, I was such an idiot, or like, what was I thinking, or like, what, I don't know. What did she see in me? Like all kinds of things like that.
Are you a good husband?
I'm a good husband. Yeah, I mean, I work at it.
Yeah.
I could be better.
Yeah.
Like, you ask my wife, I think she'd say the same thing, but there's things I need to work on there. Mostly communication based, like, I think. I don't know.
So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when you're at the second half of the ending towards your career, you're looking towards the sunset of your career.
Right.
What are people going to say about you in their field?
Oh man, this is a really fun exercise. This is like the eulogy exercise. What are people going to say about you? It's like what I want them to say is that I mentored, I changed, I helped growth, I expanded our specialty, and I want to make some changes that are like, or not even, I don't even know what those changes are, but I want to just like have some things that I like settled on, or that I've innovated, that are like that's the thing.
You want to make a difference?
Yeah, I want to
remember something made a difference.
Make a difference. Yeah, I think so.
I think everyone looks at you, and this is a compliment. You balance it all. You seem to be, from the outside, like you're doing great surgery, getting great results. You're a great doctor. You have a fellowship. You're living life physically in a way that many people wish to be. Is it true? Do you really balance it all like that? Are you really? Is what we envision of you true?
Most of it, yeah. I mean, part of it is certainly like a branding on social media.
Yeah.
Like I don't show myself yelling at my kids on social media, right? But that's part of the process. That's part of the growth. Yeah. And what you see is what it is. That's my life a little bit, and it could be better. And there's misbalances all the time, honestly.
But what we see is your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything. You're macro adjusting to micro adjusting, and I feel like I'm getting to the micro adjusting phase a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to get to the rapid fire questions.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, rapid fire questions for Cameron. Last book you read?
Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss.
Who's your Hollywood double?
Maybe Dierks Bentley, a country singer. It's the curly hair.
Who's your best friend?
Chris. Well, my wife is my best friend. My best friend for the longest is a guy named Chris Hawes, who lives in Maui. We've been friends since second grade.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you go to church?
I do.
Do you like salt or do you like sweets?
Salt.
Favorite candy bar?
Reese's.
Favorite all-time movie?
Old School or Step Brothers. That's terrible to see. Those are horrible movies. But I love that type of comedy for sure.
Beach or mountains?
Oh, that's the hardest of them. Probably beach.
Beach.
Yeah, that's a hard one because I live in the mountains. Yeah.
Guilty pleasure?
Instagram.
If you're going to cheat food-wise, what are you going to pick out with?
Chocolate peanut butter.
Favorite superhero?
Superman.
Favorite cereal as a kid?
Kix. Because I was the son of a nutritionist and my mom had me reading labels when I was a kid, and I could get any cereal I wanted in the cereal aisle as long as I had less than 9 grams of sugar, which leaves you with like regular Cheerios, Kix, like shredded wheat, or if I could earn an extra gram, and then I could get Honey Nut Cheerios. So yeah, I'd say Kix. It holds a special place.
Pet peeve, something that disproportionately bothers you that shouldn't.
Laziness.
Interesting. So if there was one person that's inspired you the most, that you say, you know what, that person changed me. You know, I met that person and that person changed me. Who would that be?
Oh man, I have this personally, like spiritually and professionally, I think on a lot of levels. Personally, it's my buddy Chris, who I was talking about, who lives in Maui. He's like my person, knows me as well as anybody in the whole world. My wife Aubrey is very much that way. She was I was so in love with her from such a young age. I always have been. Like, she was such a motivator to me in so many ways that she doesn't even know about, and still is. She's a rock star. I mean, she's the superstar. And then professionally, like, that's constant. Gary Lask, like I said, I feel like I owe him everything. He's the one who, like, you're a unicorn, like, go be a unicorn, basically. And colleagues now that have always supported me, Ben Tale in LA, and Mike Nyack in St. Louis, and Jason Bloom in Philadelphia. These guys they've been in my corner, they believed in me, they pushed me, and they're so good. And so there's all these professional, like, parts of them too that I'm just like, these guys, they're incredible, you know? Yeah.
Outside of medicine, who's inspired you? Someone you've never met before? Historical figure, mythical figure?
Oh my gosh. So this ties in a little bit to the last book I read. This guy named Tim Ferriss, who's like, you know who that is? Yeah. He, like, maybe not as much on a personal level, but the way he thinks and approaches things and really does what you're doing right now. Grabs people that he feels to be remarkable and digs into them and pulls out the pearls.
Yeah.
Like, I told you this before off camera, but the way that you ask questions is just unique, and you're really good at it. He's really good at it. That's a sign of a very, like, deep and intelligent person usually. And so I see him do that, I'm like, that's remarkable and incredible, and I love the information that I'm getting from him, basically.
That's awesome. All right, so I definitely have to end it there because he just went off that I'm remarkable. So.
I love it.
All right, well, I can't. This was awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. As far as, like, when I end this, I would say, are you a unicorn? Yes, you're a unicorn. Is the substance there? Yes, you are who we perceive you. You're getting great results. You're a great surgeon. You're a great mentor to many. I'm lucky to have you on this program here at Robert's Pizza in Chicago, which is a great place for pizza. So we gotta recommend everyone comes here. But I'm excited. You know, you're quite a bit younger than me, and I remember when I first saw you come up because you gave this one lecture on a person you saved who had a complication from fillers, and I was about 5-6 years ago when you published that paper, and I was, like, really impressed. Thanks. And I said, this kid's going somewhere, and you are, and you're superseding us, and it's so much fun to watch from the side as you continue to grow and change the world. So thanks so much for being here.
I'm, like, honored to be here so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Let's finish our pizza and beers.
All right.
Man. Let's do it. Cool.